Have you ever wondered what you would do if the person you loved humiliated the woman who gave you life? Damien Okafor, a 30-year-old billionaire, returned home expecting to check on his upcoming wedding preparations. Instead, he walked into a nightmare. Standing in front of a shocked crowd was his fiancée, Vanessa Adams, screaming at his elderly mother, Grace Okafor. Before anyone could stop her, Vanessa did the unthinkable. She grabbed a container of trash and dumped it all over Grace. In that moment, Damien's heart shattered. The woman he planned to marry had publicly humiliated the mother who sacrificed everything to raise him. Stay tuned because this unforgettable story is filled with heartbreak, betrayal, shocking twists, emotional moments, and a powerful lesson about true love and genuine kindness. Before we begin, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel so you never miss another amazing story. Now, let's begin the incredible journey of Damien, Amara, Grace, and Vanessa. At 30 years old, Damien Okafor was a name known throughout the country. Whenever people spoke about success, they mentioned him. Whenever business magazines published lists of the nation's richest entrepreneurs, his name was always near the top. He owned luxury hotels, real estate companies, technology firms, and investment groups. His face appeared on television, in newspapers, and on billboards. To the outside world, Damien lived a perfect life. He had wealth. He had influence. He had respect. And in just 2 weeks, he was supposed to marry the woman everyone believed was the love of his life. Vanessa Adams was beautiful, elegant, and came from a wealthy family. Together they looked like the perfect couple. The media adored them. Their wedding was expected to be one of the biggest social events of the year. Yet beneath the glamorous photographs and smiling appearances, something had always bothered Damien. Vanessa rarely showed kindness to people she considered beneath her. He had noticed it many times. The way she spoke to waiters, the way she ignored security guards, the way she complained whenever she saw poor people around her. Whenever Damien brought it up, she always laughed. "Oh, please," she would say. "You're too soft." Damien loved her and convinced himself these were flaws that could be fixed. After all, nobody was perfect. At least that was what he told himself. That Saturday afternoon, Damien had just finished a meeting with foreign investors when he decided to surprise his mother. His mother, Grace Okafor, lived in the modest neighborhood where Damien had grown up. Despite becoming a billionaire, Damien had never forgotten his roots, and neither had Grace. She refused to leave the neighborhood permanently. She often said luxury made her uncomfortable. "Your mansion is beautiful," she would tell her son, "but I prefer where people know my name." Damien smiled whenever she said that. His mother was one of the few people in the world who treated him exactly the same before and after he became rich. As he drove through the familiar streets, memories flooded his mind. He remembered selling fruits after school. He remembered helping his mother carry water from distant wells. He remembered nights when they went to bed hungry. His father had died when Damien was only 8 years old. From that day forward, Grace had sacrificed everything to raise him. She worked multiple jobs. She skipped meals so her son could eat. She endured years of hardship without ever complaining. Everything Damien had achieved was because of her sacrifices. Nothing in this world mattered more to him than his mother. As he approached her house, he frowned. A crowd had gathered outside. People stood whispering and watching something. The moment Damien stepped out of his luxury SUV, he heard shouting. A woman's voice, an angry voice. His stomach tightened. He pushed through the crowd. "What is going on?" Nobody answered. Then he saw them. His mother stood in the middle of the yard. Her shoulders were trembling. Standing opposite her was Vanessa, the woman Damien intended to marry. "What did you just say to me?" Vanessa snapped. Grace remained calm. "Vanessa, I only suggested that you show a little respect to the workers helping with the wedding preparations." Vanessa laughed mockingly. "Respect?" Several neighbors exchanged uncomfortable glances. Grace spoke gently. "They are human beings. There is no need to insult them." Vanessa's face darkened. "And who are you to lecture me?" Grace sighed. "I am trying to help." No, you're trying to control me. The crowd grew silent. Damien could hardly believe what he was hearing. Vanessa had never spoken this way in front of him. Grace looked hurt but remained composed. I only want peace. Vanessa pointed a finger at her. Stop acting like some saint. Vanessa, do you know what your problem is? Vanessa shouted. You think because your son has money, everybody must obey you. Grace shook her head. That isn't true. Vanessa's eyes blazed with anger. Before anyone could react, she marched toward a trash container sitting nearby. The crowd gasped. A terrible feeling settled in Damien's chest. No, she wouldn't. Surely not. But Vanessa grabbed the container. Then, in one shocking movement, she emptied it over Grace's head. Rotten vegetables, dirty water, food scraps, dust, garbage. Everything fell onto the elderly woman. The crowd erupted in disbelief. Several women screamed. Others covered their mouths. Grace stood frozen. Trash clung to her clothes. Dirty water dripped from her face. For a few seconds, complete silence filled the air. Then a thunderous voice shattered it. Vanessa! Everyone turned. Vanessa froze. Her eyes widened. The color drained from her face. Damien. The billionaire walked forward slowly. Every step felt heavy. Every step fueled by anger. His jaw tightened. His hands clenched into fists. Never in his life had he felt such rage. Not toward a business rival. Not toward someone who had betrayed him. Not even toward people who had tried to ruin his companies. Because this was different. This involved his mother. The woman who had sacrificed everything for him. Damien stopped a few feet away. His voice was cold. Did you just pour trash on my mother? Grace immediately shook her head. Damien, let it go. But Damien wasn't listening. His eyes never left Vanessa. She provoked you? Vanessa nodded desperately. She kept interfering. You poured garbage on her. Vanessa's confidence began disappearing. It was a mistake. A mistake. His laugh contained no humor. You picked up a trash container. Damien, please. You walked toward her. The woman started crying. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. For the first time, Damien saw Vanessa clearly. Not the beautiful woman he planned to marry. Not the woman smiling beside him in magazine covers. But the person she truly was. And what he saw horrified him. The crowd remained silent as Damien reached into his pocket. He removed a small velvet box. Vanessa's eyes widened. The engagement ring. The same ring worth more money than most people would earn in a lifetime. The symbol of their future together. Her face brightened slightly. Maybe he was forgiving her. Maybe everything would be okay. But then Damien opened the box, removed the ring, and held it in his palm. His voice was firm. The wedding is canceled. The words struck Vanessa like lightning. What? The wedding is canceled. No. The relationship is over. Tears streamed down her face. You can't do this. I can. No, Damien. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Vanessa grabbed his arm. Please. He pulled away. Let go. You love me. I thought I did. Her crying intensified. It was one mistake. Damien looked at his mother. Grace stood covered in garbage. Humiliated. Heartbroken. And suddenly the answer became very simple. Good people did not treat others that way. Especially not elderly women. Especially not the mother of the man they claimed to love. You didn't make one mistake, Damien said quietly. You revealed who you really are. The words cut deeper than any insult. Vanessa collapsed to her knees. Please don't leave me. But Damien had already made his decision. Some things could never be forgiven. He walked toward his mother. Without caring about the trash covering her clothes, he wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Grace looked up at him. Her eyes glistened with tears. Son, I'm here. Together they walked toward his vehicle. Behind them, Vanessa continued crying, calling his name, begging him to come back. But Damien never turned around. Not once. As he helped his mother into the SUV, he felt an unexpected mixture of emotions. Anger, Sadness, relief, heartbreak. The woman he planned to spend his life with was gone. Yet he knew he had made the right choice. During the drive home, neither spoke for several minutes. Finally, Grace broke the silence. "I'm sorry." Damien looked at her in surprise. "Why are you apologizing?" "Because this must be painful for you." He sighed heavily. "It is." Grace stared out the window. "You loved her." "I thought I did." The billionaire tightened his grip on the steering wheel. For years he had believed Vanessa was the one. Now everything had fallen apart. The future he imagined no longer existed. A painful realization settled in his heart. Despite all his wealth, despite all his success, despite everything he had achieved, he still hadn't found a woman with a genuinely good heart. As the city lights appeared in the distance, Damien stared ahead silently. For the first time in many years, he felt completely alone. And deep inside, he began wondering if true love was something money could never buy. 3 months had passed since Damien canceled his wedding. 3 long months. To the outside world, life seemed normal. His companies continued making billions. His investments expanded into new countries. Business magazines praised his success. Television stations invited him for interviews. People envied his life. But appearances could be deceiving. Behind the expensive suits and confident smiles was a man carrying a broken heart. Every morning Damien woke up before sunrise. He exercised in his private gym, reviewed business reports, attended meetings, signed contracts, held conferences. By evening he was exhausted, and that was exactly how he wanted it. Work had become his escape. If he stayed busy enough, he wouldn't have to think. He wouldn't have to remember. He wouldn't have to feel. Unfortunately, loneliness had a way of finding him. One evening, Damien returned to his mansion after a 14-hour workday. The enormous building stood proudly on a hill overlooking the city. It contained more rooms than he could count. A swimming pool, private cinema, a gym, gardens, luxury cars parked in the garage. Everything money could buy. Yet as he stepped inside, the silence felt overwhelming. The house was too big, too empty, too quiet. The butler greeted him. "Welcome home, sir." Damien nodded. "Thank you." He walked through the massive living room. The expensive furniture suddenly seemed meaningless. The giant television remained off. The dining table designed for 12 people sat unused. The mansion didn't feel like a home. It felt like a museum. A beautiful museum filled with things but lacking warmth. Damien loosened his tie and sat alone in the darkness. For a long moment he simply stared ahead. Then his thoughts drifted toward Vanessa. He hated that it still happened. He hated that despite everything she had done, memories still surfaced. The vacations, the dates, the plans they had made, the dreams they had shared. Sometimes he wondered if any of it had been real. Had she ever truly loved him? Or had she only loved the lifestyle he provided? The question haunted him. A knock interrupted his thoughts. "Come in." The housekeeper entered. "Sir, dinner is ready." "I'm not hungry." "You haven't eaten all day." Damien forced a smile. "I'll eat later." The woman hesitated before leaving. Everyone who worked for him had noticed the change. The energetic billionaire they once knew seemed distant now. More serious. More withdrawn. More alone. After she left, Damien walked onto the balcony. The city lights sparkled below. Thousands of people were living their lives. Families were eating dinner together. Couples were laughing. Children were playing. Meanwhile, one of the richest men in the country stood alone. A bitter smile crossed his face. Money could buy almost anything, but not companionship, not loyalty, not genuine love, not happiness. The next morning, Damien attended a charity event. Hundreds of guests filled the grand ballroom. Business leaders, politicians, celebrities, and journalists moved through the crowd. As soon as Damien arrived, people gathered around him. Everyone wanted his attention. Everyone wanted a photograph. Everyone wanted a conversation. Among them were several women. Beautiful women. Successful women. Elegant women. One after another introduced themselves. A famous actress smiled brightly. "I've always wanted to meet you." A fashion model handed him her number. A social media influencer spent 20 minutes flirting with him. Damien remained polite, but inside he felt nothing. Absolutely nothing. Their conversations seemed rehearsed, artificial, superficial. Most spoke about his wealth, his companies, his success, his lifestyle. Very few asked about him as a person. And those who did often seemed more interested in maintaining the conversation than genuinely listening. By the end of the event, Damien felt exhausted. His friend and business partner, Kelvin, noticed. "You look miserable." Damien chuckled. "Thank you. I'm serious." Kelvin handed him a drink. "You've been like this for months." Damien sighed. "I'm fine." "No, you're not." The two men moved to a quieter corner. Kelvin lowered his voice. "You need to move on." "I'm trying." "Then start dating again." Damien laughed. "I've met plenty of women." "Exactly. And every conversation sounds the same." Kelvin nodded thoughtfully. "I understand." Damien stared across the room. A group of women were glancing in his direction. One of them waved. He pretended not to notice. "How am I supposed to know who genuinely likes me?" Kelvin didn't answer immediately, because he didn't have an answer. Neither did Damien. That was the problem. His wealth complicated everything. Every relationship came with uncertainty. Every compliment felt suspicious. Every romantic interest raised questions. Was she interested in him, or interested in what he owned? The distinction had become almost impossible to determine. A few days later, Damien visited his mother. Unlike his mansion, Grace's home felt warm and welcoming. The smell of cooking filled the air. Soft music played from an old radio. Photographs decorated the walls. The moment Damien entered, he felt more relaxed. Grace smiled. "My son." He hugged her. "How are you?" "Good." She narrowed her eyes. "You're lying." Damien laughed. "Mothers always know." "Of course we do." They sat together in the living room. Grace served him food. Even though he employed some of the country's best chefs, nothing compared to his mother's cooking. For a while they talked about ordinary things. Business, neighbors, community events. Then Grace suddenly became serious. "You're lonely." Damien looked down. His mother always saw through him. "I'm okay." "No." She shook her head. "You're surviving. That's different." The room grew quiet. Damien stared at his plate. For months he had hidden his feelings from everyone. But hiding them from his mother was impossible. Finally he spoke. "I'm tired." Grace listened carefully. "Tired of what?" "Everything." His voice sounded heavier than he intended. "I'm tired of wondering whether people are genuine." Grace remained silent, allowing him to continue. "I'm tired of meeting women who only see my bank account." His mother reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I know. I thought Vanessa loved me." The pain in his voice was impossible to miss. Grace's eyes softened. "Not everyone is like her." "I know. But how do I know who isn't?" For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Grace smiled gently. "Because good people reveal themselves." Damien frowned. "What does that mean?" "Character can't stay hidden forever." She leaned back. "Eventually kindness reveals itself. And selfishness does too." Damien thought about Vanessa. The woman had spent years pretending. Yet in one moment of anger, her true nature had appeared. Perhaps his mother was right. Maybe character always found a way to reveal itself. Still, he remained skeptical. Finding someone good feels impossible. Grace chuckled. "You sound dramatic." "I'm serious." "So am I." She smiled knowingly. "The right woman won't care about your money." Damien laughed. "Those women are rare." "They exist." "Where?" His mother pointed toward the window. "Everywhere." Damien shook his head. "You make it sound easy." "It isn't." Grace's expression softened. "But love rarely arrives when we expect it." Those words stayed with him. Over the following weeks, Damien continued focusing on work. Yet his mother's advice lingered in his mind. Character reveals itself. Kindness reveals itself. Selfishness reveals itself. Perhaps he had been searching in the wrong places. Perhaps genuine people weren't attending luxury galas and exclusive parties. Perhaps they were ordinary people living ordinary lives. One rainy afternoon, Damien found himself watching people from his office window. Employees hurried through the streets carrying umbrellas. Street vendors protected their goods from the rain. Drivers battled traffic. Everyone seemed busy. Everyone seemed connected to something. Meanwhile, despite all his success, Damien felt strangely disconnected from the world. His phone rang. It was his mother. He smiled immediately. "Hello, Mom." "Hello, my son. You sound happy." "I met someone today." Damien laughed. "A boyfriend? Don't be silly." "So who did you meet?" There was excitement in her voice, the kind he hadn't heard in months. "A young girl at the market." Damien smiled. His mother loved talking to strangers. "What's special about her?" Grace paused, then said something that would unknowingly change both of their lives forever. "She reminded me that truly good people still exist." Damien leaned back in his chair. For the first time in months, genuine curiosity appeared on his face. Little did he know that the homeless girl his mother had met that afternoon was about to transform his life completely. And the loneliness he had carried for so long was nearing its end. The next morning, Grace Okafor woke up thinking about the conversation she had with Damien the previous evening. As she prepared breakfast, she couldn't stop replaying the sadness she had heard in her son's voice. Damien had always been strong. Even when they were poor, he never complained. Even when life was difficult, he found reasons to smile. But lately, something had changed. The pain caused by Vanessa's betrayal had left a scar. For the first time in years, Grace saw loneliness in her son's eyes. As a mother, it broke her heart. She wanted nothing more than to see him genuinely happy again. After breakfast, Grace decided to visit the local market. The market was one of her favorite places. Unlike the wealthy circles her son often moved in, the market felt real. People laughed openly, argued openly, shared stories openly. Life happened there without pretense. The elderly woman grabbed her shopping basket and headed out. The morning sun was bright, and the streets buzzed with activity. By the time she arrived at the market, hundreds of traders had already opened their stalls. Women called out prices. Customers bargained loudly. Children ran between the crowded walkways. The smell of fresh vegetables, spices, and roasted corn filled the air. Grace smiled. The atmosphere always made her feel alive. For nearly 2 hours she moved from stall to stall buying supplies. Fresh tomatoes, rice, beans, cooking oil, vegetables, seasonings. Unfortunately, she purchased more than she realized. When she finally finished shopping, she looked down at her bags and sighed. They were heavy, very heavy. Grace attempted to lift them. The bags barely moved. "Oh dear," she muttered. She adjusted her grip and tried again. This time she managed to lift them a few inches before her arms began aching. Several people passed by. Some glanced at her. Others ignored her completely. Nobody offered assistance. Grace wasn't angry. Most people were busy with their own problems. Still, she wished someone would help. Just then, a soft voice interrupted her thoughts. "Ma'am, would you like some help?" Grace turned around. Standing before her was a young woman. At first glance, she appeared ordinary. Yet something about her immediately captured Grace's attention. She looked about 23 years old. Her skin was dark and beautiful. Her eyes were kind. Her smile was warm. But her clothes told a different story. The dress she wore was faded and worn. Her slippers were old and nearly falling apart. A small tear ran along one shoulder of her dress. The signs were obvious. The girl was poor, very poor. Yet, despite her appearance, there was dignity in the way she carried herself. Grace smiled. "That's very kind of you." The young woman nodded. "Those bags look heavy." "They are." Without hesitation, the girl bent down and picked up 2 of the heaviest bags. Grace's eyes widened. "You're stronger than you look." The girl laughed softly. When you spend your life carrying things, you get used to it. The answer surprised Grace. There was no self-pity in her voice, no bitterness, just simple honesty. The two women began walking together. My name is Grace. The young woman smiled. I'm Amara. That's a beautiful name. Thank you. For a few moments they walked quietly. Then Grace asked a simple question. Do you work in the market? Amara nodded. Sometimes. Sometimes. The young woman hesitated. Then she shrugged. I do whatever work I can find. Grace frowned slightly. What kind of work? Helping traders carry goods. Cleaning stalls. Washing dishes. Running errands. Anything, really? Grace listened carefully. The more Amara spoke, the more curious she became. There was something unusual about her. Most people facing such difficult circumstances became bitter. But Amara seemed different. Do you live nearby? Grace asked. A shadow crossed Amara's face. For the first time, her smile weakened. Not exactly. Grace noticed the hesitation. Not exactly? Amara looked away. I don't really have a home. The word struck Grace like a punch. You don't. Amara shook her head. My parents died when I was 17. Grace's heart tightened. Oh my! I stayed with relatives for a while. What happened? Amara gave a sad smile. They didn't want me there. Grace didn't need further explanation. She had seen such situations before. Some families welcomed orphans. Others viewed them as burdens. Apparently, Amara had encountered the second kind. So where do you sleep? Different places. Grace stared at her. Different places? Amara nodded. Sometimes in abandoned buildings. Sometimes behind shops. Sometimes wherever I can find shelter. Grace felt tears threatening to form. This beautiful young woman had no home, no family, no security. Yet she was the one helping others. The unfairness of it all broke Grace's heart. I'm sorry. Amara smiled. It's okay. No, it isn't. The younger woman looked surprised. Grace continued. Nobody deserves that. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Amara suddenly laughed. The sound was genuine, bright, unexpected. Grace blinked. What is it? Amara grinned. You sound exactly like my mother. Grace's eyes softened. You miss her. Every day. There was pain in her voice now. Real pain. The kind that never completely disappears. Grace understood. She knew what it meant to lose someone you loved. My mother used to tell me something, Amara said. What was that? She said that kindness costs nothing. Grace smiled. Wise woman. Very wise. Amara's eyes sparkled. She always helped people. Even when we had little. Grace felt warmth spread through her chest. Suddenly everything made sense. Amara's kindness wasn't accidental. It had been taught, nurtured, passed down from her parents. The two women continued talking as they walked. Before long, they reached a bus stop. Grace knew their time together was ending. Strangely, the thought disappointed her. It felt as though she had known Amara much longer than a single morning. You've helped me greatly today. Amara shook her head. It was nothing. It wasn't nothing. Grace reached into her purse. Immediately Amara stepped back. No. Grace blinked. What? I don't want money. The older woman stared at her. Most people would have accepted the offer immediately, especially someone struggling as much as Amara. Yet the young woman refused. You helped me. I know. So let me thank you. Amara smiled gently. You already did. How? By talking to me. Grace looked confused. Amara laughed. You'd be surprised how many people act like I'm invisible. The words broke Grace's heart. Yet before she could respond, Amara continued. Today was nice. A lump formed in Grace's throat. The young woman wasn't asking for money, or favors, or sympathy. She was simply grateful someone had treated her like a human being. At that moment, Grace became certain of one thing. This girl possessed a beautiful heart. A truly beautiful heart. Something increasingly rare in the world. As they prepared to part ways, Grace asked, Will I see you again? Amara smiled. I'm usually around the market. Good. The older woman hesitated. Then she added, I'd like that. Amara's smile widened. So would I. With that, the young woman walked away. Grace watched her disappear into the crowd. For a long time she remained standing there, thinking, reflecting, remembering every word they had exchanged. Something about Amara felt special. Not because she was beautiful, not because she was hardworking, not because she had endured hardship, but because she remained kind despite everything life had done to her. That was rare, very rare. Most people became cruel after suffering. Amara had become compassionate instead. When Grace finally returned home, she couldn't stop thinking about her. Throughout the afternoon, memories of the young woman kept resurfacing. By evening, she was still thinking about her. And when Damien arrived for dinner, she immediately brought up the subject. Her son noticed the excitement in her voice. You seem happy. Grace smiled. I met someone today. Damien laughed. The mysterious person from your phone call? Yes. What makes her so special? Grace sat down across from him. Then she told him everything. The heavy bags, the kindness, the conversation, the homelessness, the refusal to accept money. Damien listened quietly. As the story continued, he found himself becoming interested. Not because he expected anything, but because his mother seemed genuinely impressed. And Grace was rarely impressed by people. When she finally finished, Damien smiled. You really like this girl? Grace nodded. I do. What was her name again? Amara. The older woman leaned back in her chair. Then she said something that surprised even herself. I don't know why, but I feel like God brought her into our lives for a reason. Damien chuckled. You've known her for one day. I know. But sometimes one day is enough. Damien smiled politely, yet he had no idea that his mother's words would soon prove true. Because somewhere in the city, a homeless girl named Amara was preparing for another difficult night, and neither she nor Damien knew that their lives were moving toward each other. Slowly, quietly, unavoidably, and when they finally met, neither of their lives would ever be the same again. For several days after meeting Amara, Grace Okafor couldn't stop thinking about her. The young woman's face constantly appeared in her mind. Her warm smile, her humble nature, her willingness to help a complete stranger without expecting anything in return. Most importantly, her kindness. Grace had spent many years around wealthy people because of her son's success. She had met politicians, celebrities, business executives, and socialites. Many of them were educated. Many were successful. Many were impressive. Yet very few possessed the genuine goodness she had seen in Amara. The more she thought about it, the more convinced she became. There was something special about that girl. One evening, Grace sat in her living room while Damien visited. As usual, he arrived after work looking exhausted. His expensive suit was perfectly tailored. His watch probably cost more than most people's houses. Yet the sadness remained in his eyes. Grace noticed it immediately. You need a vacation. Damien laughed. A vacation won't solve my problems. It might help. He shook his head. I'm fine. Grace rolled her eyes. You keep saying that. Because it's true. You're a terrible liar. Damien chuckled despite himself. The older woman smiled. At least she had managed to make him laugh. Then she decided to bring up the subject that had occupied her thoughts all week. I saw Amara again today. Damien looked up. The market girl? Grace nodded. Yes. What happened? We talked. That's all. Grace laughed. Why do you sound disappointed? I'm not. The billionaire leaned back. But you talk about her like she's some kind of miracle. Grace became thoughtful. No. What then? I think she's genuine. Damien's expression softened. That word carried weight now. Genuine. After Vanessa, genuine people seemed increasingly rare. Grace studied her son carefully. Then an idea slowly formed in her mind. At first it seemed ridiculous. But the more she considered it, the more it made sense. If she wanted to know Amara's true character, she needed to spend more time with her. Not as Damien Okafor's wealthy mother. Not as a respected woman connected to one of the country's richest men. But as an ordinary person. Someone with no influence, no wealth, no status. Only then could she truly understand who Amara was. The next morning, Grace put her plan into motion. She rented a small stall in the market. It wasn't expensive. Just a simple wooden structure located near the section where she had first met Amara. When the trader handed her the keys, he looked confused. "Madam Grace, why do you need a stall?" Grace smiled. "I want to try something new." The trader laughed. "At your age. Especially at my age." The man shook his head but said nothing further. Over the next few days, Grace transformed herself. She stopped wearing expensive clothes. She removed her jewelry. She left her designer handbags at home. Instead, she dressed like an ordinary market woman. Simple wrapper, simple blouse, simple sandals. Looking into the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Perfect. That was exactly what she wanted. The following Monday, Grace arrived early. She arranged vegetables, spices, and small household goods on the shelves. Then she sat down and waited. Hours passed. Customers came and went. Grace sold a few items. Yet her attention constantly wandered toward the crowded walkways. She kept hoping to see a familiar face. By afternoon, she began wondering whether Amara would appear at all. Then suddenly she heard a voice. "Ma'am Grace." The older woman turned around. Immediately she smiled. There she was, Amara. The young woman's face lit up with genuine happiness. The reaction surprised Grace. Many people pretended to be happy when seeing others. But Amara's excitement looked completely real. The girl hurried toward the stall. "I can't believe it's you." Grace laughed. "I was about to say the same thing." Amara looked around curiously. "You work here now?" "Something like that." The younger woman smiled brightly. "I'm so happy to see you." The words touched Grace deeply. Nobody had paid Amara to say them. Nobody had instructed her to be friendly. Her happiness came naturally. "How have you been?" Grace asked. "Good." Amara glanced at the products. "Business looks slow." Grace sighed dramatically. "You're right." Without hesitation, Amara rolled up her sleeves. "Let's fix that." Grace blinked. "What?" The young woman grabbed a broom nearby. Then she started sweeping. Customers turned their heads. Several stopped to watch. The stall suddenly looked cleaner and more welcoming. Next, Amara rearranged the products. She organized everything neatly, placed popular items where customers could easily see them. Within an hour, more people were stopping by. Grace watched in amazement. "You've done this before." Amara laughed. "Many times." "You're very good." The young woman shrugged. "You learn things when life forces you to." Throughout the afternoon, Amara remained by Grace's side. She greeted customers warmly, helped carry purchases, answered questions. By evening, sales had doubled. Grace stared at the money in disbelief. "You should be running this stall." Amara laughed. "No, thank you." When it was time to close, Grace reached into her purse. "You earned this." She offered several bills. Amara immediately shook her head. "No." Grace frowned. "You worked all day." "I know. So take it." The younger woman stepped back. "I was helping a friend." Grace was stunned. "A friend?" Amara nodded. "Friends help each other." The older woman felt emotion rising inside her. Most people would have grabbed the money immediately, especially someone struggling to survive. Yet Amara refused. Again. Not because she was proud. Not because she was rude. But because she genuinely wanted to help. As they walked together toward the bus stop, Grace became increasingly convinced that her instincts had been correct. This girl was different. The following day, Amara returned. And the day after that. Soon it became routine. Every morning Grace opened the stall. Every afternoon Amara appeared. And every day she found new ways to help. Sometimes she carried heavy goods. Sometimes she cleaned. Sometimes she entertained customers with her cheerful personality. She never complained. Never demanded payment. Never expected rewards. One afternoon, Grace decided to ask a question. Amara. Yes. Why do you spend so much time helping me? The younger woman looked surprised. What do you mean? You don't have to come here every day. Amara smiled softly. I know. Then why do you? The girl became quiet. Finally she spoke. Because you remind me of my mother. Grace's eyes widened. What? Amara looked away. My mother used to own a small food stall. The older woman listened carefully. When she died, I missed helping her. Her voice trembled slightly. Being here feels nice. Grace swallowed hard. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Grace reached across the counter and squeezed her hand. The gesture made Amara smile. From that day forward, their bond deepened. They shared meals together, talked for hours, laughed often. Slowly, Grace learned more about Amara's life. The young woman often went hungry. Some nights she slept outside. During heavy rainstorms she searched desperately for shelter. Yet she never complained, never blamed anyone, never became bitter. The resilience amazed Grace. One afternoon, a wealthy customer arrived at the stall. The woman accidentally dropped a wallet filled with cash. She walked away without noticing. Immediately Amara picked it up. Ma'am. The woman kept walking. Ma'am. Finally she turned around. Amara ran toward her and returned the wallet. The customer checked inside. Every cent remained untouched. Thank you. She offered Amara money. The younger woman refused. Grace watched the entire interaction. Her heart swelled with pride. The girl hadn't known anyone was watching. She could have kept the wallet. Nobody would have known. Instead she chose honesty. At that moment Grace became certain. This wasn't an act. This wasn't manipulation. This was simply who Amara was. That evening, after closing the stall, Grace returned home. She immediately called Damien. The billionaire answered after several rings. Hello, Mom. You need to come see this girl. Damien laughed. We're talking about Amara again? Yes. His mother sounded unusually serious. Mom, I'm serious. What happened now? Grace told him about the wallet, the unpaid work, the kindness, the honesty, everything. When she finished, Damien sat quietly. Finally he asked, Do people like that really exist? Grace smiled. They do. The older woman paused. Then a new idea formed in her mind. A bold idea, perhaps even a risky one. If Damien truly wanted to know whether someone liked him for who he was rather than for his money, maybe he should meet Amara. Not as a billionaire, but as an ordinary man. Poor man. A man with nothing except his character. The thought excited her. And as she ended the call, Grace couldn't stop smiling, because she had a feeling that fate was preparing something extraordinary. And very soon, her son and the homeless girl with the beautiful heart would finally meet. Neither of them would be prepared for what happened next. For 3 days, Grace Okafor carefully considered her plan. The more she thought about it, the more convinced she became that it was the right thing to do. She had spent weeks observing Amara. She had watched her return lost money, help strangers, work without expecting payment, share food with people who had even less than she did. Nothing about the young woman seemed fake. Yet Grace knew her son carried wounds that had not healed. Vanessa's betrayal had changed him. Before that experience, Damien believed people were naturally good. Now he questioned everyone's intentions, especially when it came to relationships. Perhaps meeting someone who knew nothing about his wealth would help him trust again. One evening, Grace invited Damien to dinner. The billionaire arrived shortly after sunset. As usual, he came directly from work. The moment he sat down, Grace got straight to the point. I want you to meet Amara. Damien nearly choked on his drink. The market girl? Yes. He sighed. Mom. What? You talk about her every day. Because she's wonderful. Damien laughed. You sound like you're trying to arrange a marriage. Grace pointed her spoon at him. Don't tempt me. The billionaire shook his head. I'm serious. So am I. Both of them burst into laughter. When the laughter faded, Grace's expression became thoughtful. Just meet her. Damien leaned back. And say what? Hello. That's it. That's how conversations usually start. Damien smiled despite himself. Then he became serious. Mom, what if she's just like everyone else? Grace immediately shook her head. She isn't. You can't know that. I do know that. How? Because character reveals itself. The words reminded Damien of an earlier conversation. His mother had said the same thing before. He sighed. What exactly do you want me to do? A mischievous smile appeared on Grace's face. I want you to pretend to be poor. Damien blinked. What? You heard me. The billionaire stared at her. For several seconds he wasn't sure whether she was joking. Then he realized she was completely serious. You've lost your mind. Grace laughed. Probably. Mom, listen to me. She leaned forward. Amara knows me as a simple market woman. And she's never treated me differently. Damien crossed his arms. What does that have to do with me? If she meets Damien Okafor the billionaire, she'll know who you are. The billionaire nodded slowly. That's true. But if she meets Damien, the son of a market woman, realization began forming in his mind. Grace smiled. Exactly. For the first time, Damien looked interested. Not because he expected romance. Far from it. But because the idea intrigued him. For once, someone would meet him without knowing about the billions. Without knowing about the companies. Without knowing about the fame. She would simply meet him. The real him. Or at least a version of him. When? Grace grinned. Tomorrow. The next morning, Damien stood in front of a mirror inside his mansion. Normally, he wore custom-made suits worth thousands of dollars. Today was different. Very different. A pile of old clothes sat on the bed. Simple trousers. Faded shirt. Worn sandals. Damien stared at them, then laughed. If my shareholders could see me now. He changed clothes. A few minutes later, he barely recognized himself. Gone was the billionaire businessman. Standing in the mirror was an ordinary young man. The transformation felt strangely refreshing. For years people had judged him based on wealth. Today nobody would know. Today he was invisible. When he arrived at the market, Grace almost didn't recognize him. Then she burst out laughing. Oh my goodness! What? You actually look poor. Thank you. I think. Both of them laughed. After a few minutes, Grace settled down. She's usually here by now. As if on cue, a familiar voice called out. Ma'am Grace. Both turned. Amara was approaching the stall carrying a small basket. The moment she saw Grace, her face brightened. Damien noticed immediately. The happiness looked genuine. Not forced. Not exaggerated. Simply genuine. His mother waved. Good morning. Good morning. Then Amara noticed him. She stopped. Her curious eyes moved between the two of them. Grace smiled. Amara, I'd like you to meet someone. The young woman stepped closer. This is my son, Damien. For a brief moment, nobody spoke. Then Amara smiled warmly. Hello. Damien felt unexpectedly nervous. Hello. It's nice to meet you. You too. There was no excitement in her voice. No special reaction. No attempt to impress him. No flirtation. Nothing. She simply treated him like another person. Oddly enough, Damien liked that. A lot. So you're the famous son? Amara asked. Damien raised an eyebrow. Famous. Grace laughed. I talk about him too much. Amara grinned. Every mother does. The comment made all three laugh. Within minutes, the awkwardness disappeared. As customers arrived, Amara immediately started helping. She greeted people, organized products, swept the area, worked tirelessly. Damien watched carefully. His mother had praised her constantly. Now he wanted to see for himself. To his surprise, everything Grace had said was true. Amara worked harder than anyone around her. More importantly, she treated everyone kindly. Rich customers, poor customers, children, elderly people. Everyone received the same smile, the same respect. the same kindness. At one point, an old man approached carrying a heavy sack. Without hesitation, Amara rushed over. "Let me help you." The old man smiled gratefully. "Thank you, my daughter." Damien watched as she carried the heavy load herself. The action wasn't performed for attention. Nobody was even looking. She simply saw someone struggling and decided to help. It was such a small thing. Yet Damien found himself impressed. Around noon, business slowed. Grace decided to leave briefly. "I need to buy something." Amara nodded. "I'll watch the stall." Grace smiled knowingly. "Good." Then she disappeared into the crowd. Suddenly Damien and Amara found themselves alone. For a moment neither spoke. Then Amara broke the silence. So, she smiled. "Your mother talks about you constantly." Damien groaned. "That's embarrassing." "A little." He laughed. The sound surprised even him. It had been a long time since conversation felt this easy. "What does she say?" "That you're hard-working." Damien nodded. "Fair. Responsible. Mostly true. Stubborn." He laughed again. "Definitely true." Amara smiled. The more they talked, the more comfortable they became. They discussed simple things. Favorite foods. Childhood memories. Funny experiences. Dreams. Unlike most conversations Damien had with women, this one felt natural. There was no hidden agenda. No attempts to impress each other. No discussion about money. Just two people talking. Hours seemed to pass quickly. At one point, Damien noticed Amara looking tired. "Have you eaten?" She hesitated. "A little." The answer sounded suspicious. He reached into a nearby cooler. His mother had prepared food earlier. "Here." Amara shook her head. "You eat it. We can share." "I'm fine." Her stomach growled loudly. Both of them froze. Then Damien burst out laughing. A second later, Amara joined him. The situation was too ridiculous. "Okay," she admitted. "Maybe I'm hungry." They shared the meal together. As they ate, Damien learned more about her life. The stories saddened him. Her parents had died years earlier. Relatives had abandoned her. She survived through odd jobs. Some nights she slept hungry. Yet somehow she remained optimistic. It made no sense. Most people in her situation would be bitter. She wasn't. "How do you stay positive?" Damien finally asked. Amara thought for a moment, then smiled. "I don't know." "Really?" She shrugged. "My parents taught me that bad times don't last forever." Damien became quiet. Her answer lingered in his mind. Bad times don't last forever. Simple words, yet powerful. For the first time in months, he felt something unusual. Peace. Not excitement. Not attraction. Not yet. Just peace. By late afternoon, Grace returned. The moment she saw them talking comfortably, she hid a smile. Her plan seemed to be working. As the sun began setting, Amara prepared to leave. "It was nice meeting you." Damien nodded. "You too." She smiled warmly, then disappeared into the crowd. For several seconds Damien continued watching her walk away. Grace noticed. A knowing smile appeared on her face. "So?" Damien looked away quickly. "So what? What do you think?" The billionaire pretended to focus on organizing products. His mother laughed. "Damien, she's nice. That's all." He hesitated, then answered honestly. "She's different." Grace's smile widened. "I told you." Damien didn't reply. His thoughts were elsewhere. For the first time since Vanessa, he had spent an entire day enjoying someone's company. Not because of beauty, not because of attraction, but because being around them felt easy, comfortable, natural. As he drove home that evening, he found himself thinking about Amara. Her smile, her kindness, her resilience, the way she laughed, the way she spoke about hope despite having every reason to lose it. And for the first time in many months, Damien felt something stirring inside his heart. A feeling he thought had disappeared forever. Hope. Neither he nor Amara realized it yet. But their lives had just changed. The first meeting was over. The friendship had begun. And somewhere deep inside both of them, The first tiny seeds of love had quietly been planted. The days following Damien and Amara's first meeting passed surprisingly quickly. At first, Damien told himself he was only visiting the market because his mother needed help. That was the excuse he repeated in his mind. Unfortunately for him, Grace saw right through it. Every morning, her billionaire son suddenly found reasons to visit the stall. Sometimes he claimed he was delivering supplies. Other times he said he wanted fresh vegetables. Once, he even pretended he needed advice on buying tomatoes. Grace laughed so hard she nearly fell off her chair. "Since when does a billionaire need help buying tomatoes?" Damien rolled his eyes. "I like fresh food." "Of course you do." The older woman hid a smile. She knew the real reason, and it had nothing to do with vegetables. Every day, Damien secretly hoped to see Amara. And every day, she showed up. The moment she arrived, the small market stall seemed brighter. Customers smiled more. The atmosphere felt lighter. Even Grace looked happier. One sunny morning, Damien arrived before Amara. He helped arrange products while pretending not to look toward the road every few minutes. Grace watched him with amusement. "You're waiting for someone." "No, I'm not." "Really? Really?" His mother pointed behind him. Immediately Damien turned around. There was nobody there. Grace burst into laughter. "Mom!" The older woman laughed harder. Before Damien could respond, a familiar voice interrupted them. "Good morning." Both turned. Amara was approaching. A wide smile spread across her face. For reasons he couldn't explain, Damien felt his mood improve instantly. "Good morning," he replied. Amara placed a basket beside the stall. "I brought oranges." Grace blinked. "You bought these?" Amara nodded. "A farmer needed help harvesting yesterday." "And he paid you with oranges?" "Partly." Grace smiled. "You should keep them." Amara shook her head. "I brought some for you." The older woman felt touched. The young woman had so little, yet she constantly shared whatever she had. It was one more reason Grace admired her. As the morning continued, the three of them worked together. Customers came and went. Business remained steady. Several times Damien caught himself watching Amara. Not because she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, though she certainly was beautiful. What fascinated him was her spirit. She laughed easily, worked hard, and somehow found joy in simple things. It was refreshing, very refreshing. Most people Damien knew spent their lives chasing more. More money, more status, more luxury. Amara seemed grateful for whatever she had. That afternoon, an elderly customer arrived carrying a heavy sack of rice. Before anyone could react, Amara hurried over. "Let me help you." The old woman smiled. "Thank you, my daughter." Together they carried the sack across the market. When Amara returned, she was sweating. Damien handed her a bottle of water. "Here." She accepted it gratefully. "Thank you." For a moment their fingers touched. Both immediately looked away. Neither understood why such a small contact suddenly felt significant. Grace noticed. She said nothing, but her smile grew wider. Over the next few weeks, a routine developed. Every morning Damien visited the market. Every morning Amara arrived shortly afterward. And every day they spent more time together. Sometimes they worked. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they simply sat together during quiet moments. Slowly, friendship began to grow. One afternoon, rain suddenly poured from the sky. Customers rushed for shelter. Traders covered their goods. The market became chaotic. Damien, Grace, and Amara squeezed inside the tiny stall. The rain hammered the roof loudly. For a while, they simply watched the storm. Then Grace stood up. "I need to buy something." Damien frowned. "In this weather? I won't melt." Before either could stop her, she disappeared into the rain. Both Damien and Amara knew exactly what she was doing, giving them privacy. Neither mentioned it. For several moments, only the sound of rain filled the air. Finally, Amara spoke. "Your mother is wonderful." Damien smiled. "She is. You're lucky." The word lucky caught his attention. "Lucky?" Amara nodded. "I'd give anything to talk to my mother again." The sadness in her voice was impossible to miss. Damien looked at her carefully. You miss her a lot. Every day. For a moment, she stared at the rain. Then she smiled sadly. Sometimes I still forget she's gone. Damien remained silent. I'll see something funny and think, I need to tell Mom about this. Her eyes became watery. Then I remember. The confession broke his heart. Without thinking, Damien placed a comforting hand over hers. You don't have to be strong all the time. Amara looked at him. For a second, neither spoke. Then she smiled. Thank you. Something changed during that moment. The friendship deepened. Trust grew. Walls slowly began coming down. A few days later, Damien decided to learn more about her life. The reality shocked him. Far more than he expected. One evening after closing the stall, they walked together through the market. Most traders had already gone home. The streets were quieter. The setting sun painted the sky orange. Where are you staying tonight? Damien asked casually. Amara hesitated. His stomach tightened. What? She forced a smile. The usual place. What does that mean? The young woman looked away. Finally, she pointed toward an abandoned building in the distance. Damien froze. You sleep there? It's not so bad. The building looked like it might collapse at any moment. Broken windows, damaged walls, missing doors. It wasn't a home. It barely qualified as shelter. Anger rose inside him. Not at Amara. At life. At fate. At the unfairness of it all. This kind-hearted woman deserved so much more. Yet somehow she had ended up with nothing. That night Damien couldn't sleep. He lay awake thinking about her. While he slept in a mansion with dozens of empty rooms, Amara slept inside a ruined building. The contrast disturbed him deeply. The next day he arrived at the market carrying a small bag. Amara frowned. What's that? Food. Her eyes widened. That's too much. It isn't. I can't accept all this. Why not? She crossed her arms. Because I don't want charity. Damien smiled. It's not charity. What is it? A friend sharing food. Amara stared at him for several seconds. Then she smiled. You're stubborn. So I've been told. Both laughed. Eventually she accepted the food. That evening she shared most of it with several homeless children nearby. When Damien discovered this later, he wasn't even surprised. That was exactly the kind of person she was. As weeks turned into months, the bond between them became stronger. They learned each other's habits, favorite foods, favorite memories, favorite jokes. They teased each other constantly. One morning, Damien arrived late. Amara immediately noticed. You're late. He looked offended. I had things to do. You overslept. I did not. She laughed. You definitely overslept. Grace joined in. I agree. Damien stared at both women. I come here to help and this is how I'm treated? The two women burst into laughter. For the first time in a very long time, Damien found himself genuinely happy. Not because of a business deal. Not because of money. Not because of success. Simply because of the people around him. One evening, after closing the stall, Grace watched Damien and Amara talking together. The sun was setting. Neither seemed eager to leave. Both smiled constantly. Both looked relaxed. The older woman felt emotional. Months earlier, her son had been drowning in loneliness. Now she saw life returning to him. Hope returning. Happiness returning. Later that night, Grace called Damien. So what? Do you like her? Damien nearly dropped his phone. Mom, I'm asking a simple question. He sighed. She's my friend. Grace laughed. That's not what I asked. The billionaire became quiet. Then he answered honestly. I don't know. But deep down he did know. Every day he looked forward to seeing her. Every conversation felt meaningful. Every smile affected him. Every goodbye felt too short. Something was happening. Something neither of them had planned. Neither of them had expected. And neither of them could stop. Friendship had brought them together. Trust was drawing them closer. And hidden beneath every conversation, every laugh, and every shared moment, Something beautiful was beginning to grow. Neither Damien nor Amara dared to call it love yet, but their hearts were already moving in that direction. Slowly, naturally, and with every passing day, it became harder to imagine life without each other. 3 months had passed since Damien first met Amara at the market. 3 months of conversations. 3 months of laughter. 3 months of shared meals, shared memories, and shared dreams. What had begun as a simple friendship had quietly become something much deeper. Neither of them had planned for it. Neither of them had expected it. But love rarely asks for permission before entering a person's heart. It simply arrives. And by the time you realize it, everything has changed. Damien noticed the change first. One morning, he woke up smiling before he even opened his eyes. The moment he became fully awake, one thought entered his mind. Amara. He immediately sat up. Then he groaned. This was becoming a problem. A serious problem. Every day started the same way. He thought about her, wondered how she was doing, looked forward to seeing her, missed her whenever she wasn't around. As he stared at the ceiling of his enormous bedroom, he finally admitted the truth. He was in love. The realization should have frightened him. Instead, it brought an unexpected sense of peace. For months after Vanessa's betrayal, he had believed his heart was permanently damaged. Now he realized it had simply been waiting for the right person. The strange part was that Amara had entered his life when he least expected it. She wasn't rich. She wasn't famous. She wasn't part of the elite circles he usually moved in. Yet she possessed something far more valuable. A beautiful heart. And that was what had captured him. Meanwhile, across the city, Amara was struggling with her own emotions. She sat outside an abandoned building watching the sunrise. Her thoughts were entirely occupied by one person, Damien. A smile appeared on her face. Then she immediately frowned. This is ridiculous. She tried convincing herself she only viewed him as a friend. Unfortunately, her heart disagreed. Whenever he smiled, she smiled. Whenever he laughed, she laughed. Whenever he was absent, the day felt incomplete. Worst of all, she missed him. Constantly. The realization terrified her. For years she had focused entirely on survival. Finding food. Finding shelter. Finding work. Love had never been part of the plan. Yet somehow, without warning, she had fallen for him. And she had no idea what to do about it. Later that morning, both arrived at the market. The moment their eyes met, something felt different. Neither could explain it. Neither could ignore it. The air between them suddenly carried a strange tension. Not uncomfortable, just different. Grace noticed immediately. The older woman nearly laughed. She wasn't blind. The signs were obvious. Very obvious. The way they looked at each other. The way they smiled. The way they constantly searched for each other whenever one disappeared. At this point, the only people who hadn't admitted they were in love were Damien and Amara themselves. That afternoon, Grace decided to help things along. Business was unusually slow. Customers were scarce. The weather was pleasant. Perfect conditions for her little plan. I'm going home early. Damien looked surprised. Why? I have things to do. Amara frowned. Are you feeling okay? Grace smiled innocently. I'm perfectly fine. Then she stood up. Before either of them could object, she disappeared. Both immediately understood what had happened. She had left them alone. Again. For a while neither spoke. Then Amara laughed softly. Your mother is sneaky. Damien smiled. Very. She definitely did that on purpose. Absolutely. The two burst into laughter. When the laughter faded, a comfortable silence settled between them. Neither felt the need to fill it. Sometimes simply being together was enough. As afternoon slowly turned into evening, the market became quieter. The sun descended lower in the sky. Golden light painted everything in shades of orange and gold. It was beautiful. Finally Damien spoke. Want to take a walk? Amara looked surprised. Then she smiled. I'd like that. They left the stall and wandered through the quieter sections of the market. Most traders had already packed their goods. The crowds had thinned considerably. For the first time in weeks, they found themselves completely alone. The silence wasn't awkward. In fact, it felt comfortable, natural, as though they had known each other forever. Eventually, they reached a small hill overlooking part of the city. The setting sun created a breathtaking view. Orange clouds stretched across the horizon. The air felt cool and peaceful. They sat together beneath a large tree. For several minutes, neither spoke. They simply admired the sunset. Then Damien broke the silence. "Can I ask you something?" Amara turned toward him. "Of course. What keeps you going?" She looked confused. "What do you mean?" "You've been through so much." His voice was gentle. "You lost your parents. You have no permanent home. You struggle every day." He shook his head. "Most people would become bitter." Amara became quiet. For a long moment, she stared at the horizon. Finally, she answered, "I've thought about that a lot." Damien listened carefully. "My mother used to say something." "What?" "She said pain is a visitor." He frowned slightly. "A visitor?" Amara nodded. "It comes. It stays. Then eventually it leaves." The simplicity of the statement struck him. "My mother believed that if you focus only on your pain, you'll miss all the beautiful things around you." A gentle smile appeared on her face. "So I try not to focus on what's missing." "What do you focus on instead?" "The things I still have." Damien stared at her. "What things?" She laughed softly. Today, I have food." She held up one finger. "I have friends." Another finger. "I have my health." Another. "And I got to watch a beautiful sunset." The final finger. Then she smiled. "That's enough for me." Damien felt something tighten inside his chest. Not pain. Emotion. Because for the first time in a long time, he understood why being around her felt different. Amara appreciated life. Not because life had been kind to her, but because she chose gratitude anyway. That was rare. Extremely rare. He found himself admiring her more than ever. "What?" she asked. "You amaze me." The words escaped before he could stop them. Amara blinked. "What?" Damien smiled. "You've gone through things that would break most people." She looked away shyly. "I'm not special." "Yes, you are." The sincerity in his voice made her heart race. For a moment, neither spoke. The world seemed to fade away. Only the two of them remained. Then Amara asked quietly, "Can I ask you something?" Damien nodded. "Anything." "What happened to you?" The question surprised him. "What do you mean?" She studied him carefully. "Sometimes you look sad." His smile disappeared. "You've noticed that?" "Yes." For a few moments he considered lying, then decided against it. He trusted her. More than he trusted almost anyone. "I was engaged." Amara's eyes widened. "You were." Damien nodded. "We were supposed to get married." "What happened?" Pain flashed across his face. The memory still hurt. "She humiliated my mother." Amara looked shocked. "What?" He told her everything. The argument. The insults. The trash. The cancelled wedding. By the time he finished, Amara looked horrified. "She poured garbage on your mother?" Damien nodded. The young woman's face darkened. "That's awful." "It was. I can't imagine treating someone like that." Her reaction felt genuine. Completely genuine. And somehow that comforted him. For months he had carried the story alone. Now someone else understood. Someone who cared. "I'm sorry," Amara said softly. Damien smiled. "It's okay." "No." She shook her head. "It isn't." Then, without thinking, she reached over and gently squeezed his hand. The gesture was simple, yet it felt powerful. Both immediately became aware of how close they were sitting. Neither moved away. The sun slowly disappeared beneath the horizon. The sky darkened. Still they remained there, holding hands, neither willing to break the moment. Finally Damien spoke. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Amara." "Yes." He looked into her eyes. For the first time he stopped fighting the truth. Stopped hiding from it. Stopped pretending. I think meeting you changed my life. Her breath caught. The words touched something deep inside her heart, because she felt exactly the same way. And in that moment, sitting beneath the fading evening sky, both finally understood what had been growing between them for months. It wasn't friendship anymore. It wasn't admiration. It wasn't affection. It was love. Pure, unexpected, beautiful love. And although neither said the words that evening, they didn't need to. Their hearts already knew. The journey that had begun with a chance meeting in a crowded market had led them here. To this moment, to this feeling, to each other. And neither of them could imagine turning back. The days following Damien and Amara's evening on the hill were unlike anything either of them had ever experienced. Nothing had been officially said. No confession had been made. No promises had been exchanged. Yet everything had changed. The friendship that once felt simple now carried a new depth. Every glance lingered longer. Every smile felt warmer. Every goodbye became more difficult. And with each passing day, Damien's secret became harder to hide. Every morning he woke up with the same thought. Today I'll tell her. Today I'll explain everything. Today I'll tell her the truth. Then he would imagine the look on her face. The shock, the disappointment, the hurt, and suddenly he would lose his courage. Because for the first time in his life, Damien had something precious to lose. Amara. One afternoon, he sat inside his office staring at a stack of documents. Unfortunately, he had been reading the same page for nearly 10 minutes. His mind wasn't focused on work. It was focused on a homeless girl with kind eyes and a beautiful smile. A knock interrupted his thoughts. "Come in." His assistant entered. "Sir, the investors are waiting." Damien blinked. "What investors?" The assistant looked confused. "The meeting you scheduled." Damien groaned. For the first time in years, he had completely forgotten about an important meeting. The assistant stared at him. "Are you okay?" Damien forced a smile. Yes, but he wasn't okay, because he was falling deeply in love. And love had made concentrating almost impossible. Later that evening, he visited his mother. Grace immediately noticed his troubled expression. "You look worried." Damien sighed. "I need advice." The older woman smiled. "That sounds serious." "It is." Grace sat down. "Tell me." Damien hesitated, then finally spoke. "I love her." The older woman's face lit up. "I knew it." "Mom." "What?" "You weren't supposed to celebrate immediately." Grace laughed. "I've been waiting months for you to admit it." Damien shook his head. "I mean it." "So do I." The billionaire became serious. "I'm scared." That instantly erased the humor from Grace's face. "What are you afraid of?" He looked away. "The truth." Grace's smile faded. She understood immediately. Amara still believed Damien was poor. She still believed Grace was an ordinary market woman. She knew nothing about the mansion. Nothing about the companies. Nothing about the billions. Nothing about the life Damien had hidden. "You're going to have to tell her." "I know. Soon." "I know." Grace leaned forward. "The longer you wait, the worse it becomes." Damien rubbed his forehead. "I know." Unfortunately, knowing and doing were very different things. The next day, Damien arrived at the market carrying a heavy heart. The moment Amara saw him, she smiled. That smile immediately filled him with guilt. She trusted him completely, and every day he delayed telling the truth felt like a betrayal. "Good morning." "Good morning." Amara noticed his expression. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." She narrowed her eyes. "You're lying." Damien laughed weakly. "Am I that obvious?" "Very." The young woman studied him carefully. For a moment, he almost told her everything. The words nearly escaped, but fear stopped him again. What if she walked away? What if she never forgave him? What if he lost her forever? The possibility terrified him. So instead of telling the truth, he changed the subject, and immediately hated himself for it. Over the next week, the guilt grew worse. Every time Amara shared something personal, he felt ashamed. Every time she trusted him, the weight on his conscience increased. One afternoon, They sat together eating lunch behind the stall. The market was unusually quiet. For a while they talked about ordinary things. Then Amara suddenly asked a question. "What do you dream about?" Damien looked surprised. "What?" "Your future." She smiled. "What do you want?" The question seemed simple, yet it struck him deeply, because the answer was sitting right beside him. "You really want to know?" "Yes." Damien looked at her, then spoke honestly. "I want a family." Amara's smile softened. "A family?" He nodded. "I want a home filled with laughter." His voice became quieter. "I want children." He laughed nervously. "I want someone to grow old with." Amara felt her heart race. Without realizing it, she had imagined the same thing. And somehow, every future she imagined included him. The realization frightened her. Yet it also made her happy. "What about you?" Damien asked. Amara became thoughtful. "My dreams used to be different." "How?" "I used to dream about survival." The sadness in her voice touched him. "A place to sleep. A stable job. Food every day." She smiled softly. "Those were my biggest dreams." Damien felt his chest tighten. Nobody should have to dream that small. Nobody. "But now?" he asked. Amara hesitated. Then she looked away shyly. "Now I dream about being loved." The words hung between them, heavy, powerful, meaningful. For several seconds, neither spoke. Both knew the conversation had become more personal than usual. Much more personal. Finally, Damien reached for her hand. Slowly, carefully. Amara didn't pull away. Their fingers intertwined naturally. Neither wanted the moment to end. Across the market, Grace watched from a distance. A smile spread across her face. They looked happy, very happy. Yet her happiness was mixed with concern. Because she knew something they didn't. Secrets have a way of revealing themselves. Eventually. Always. And the longer Damien waited, the greater the risk. That evening, Grace confronted him again. "You need to tell her." Damien sighed. "Mom, I'm serious." "So am I." Grace shook her head. "You're running out of time." The billionaire looked confused. "What does that mean?" "People talk." His expression darkened. The possibility had occurred to him. The city wasn't small. His face appeared in newspapers, on television, online. Sooner or later someone might recognize him. Sooner or later the truth might emerge without his control. The thought made him uneasy, very uneasy. A few days later, something happened that increased his fears. Damien and Amara were walking through a different part of town when a luxury vehicle stopped nearby. A businessman stepped out. The moment he saw Damien, his eyes widened. "Mr. O'Koff." Before the man could finish, Damien interrupted. "Wrong person." The businessman looked confused. Then Damien subtly shook his head. Understanding flashed across the man's face. "Oh." The man quickly walked away. Amara stared. What was that? Damien's heart nearly stopped. For one terrifying moment, he thought everything was over. Fortunately, she simply shrugged. "Maybe he confused you with someone else." Damien forced a smile. "Maybe." But the incident haunted him. The lies were becoming harder to maintain. Dangerously hard. That night, Damien couldn't sleep. He sat alone on the balcony of his mansion staring at the city lights. The same city where Amara slept in an abandoned building. The same city where she believed he was poor. The same city where the truth waited around every corner. Hours passed. Finally, he made a decision. Tomorrow. No more delays. No more excuses. No more fear. He would tell her everything. The companies. The wealth. The disguise. All of it. She deserved the truth. Even if it cost him everything. The next morning he arrived at the market earlier than usual. His stomach twisted with anxiety. His heart pounded. For the first time in years, the billionaire felt terrified. When Amara finally arrived, she immediately noticed his expression. "You look nervous." Damien smiled weakly. "I am." "Why?" He took a deep breath. This was it. The moment he had been avoiding for months. The moment that could either strengthen their relationship or destroy it completely. "Amara." he began softly. "There's something I need to tell you." The young woman looked concerned. "What is it?" Damien opened his mouth. The truth sat on the tip of his tongue. But before he could speak, a luxury car suddenly pulled into the market. Both turned toward the sound. Neither recognized the vehicle. Yet somewhere deep inside, Damien felt a terrible sense of dread. As the car door opened and an elegant woman stepped out, his blood ran cold, because he knew exactly who she was. Vanessa. And judging by the determined look on her face, she hadn't come to the market by accident. She had come for him, and Damien instantly realized that fate was about to reveal his secret before he had the chance to do it himself. The storm he had feared for months had finally arrived. The moment Damien saw Vanessa step out of the luxury car, his heart sank. For months he had feared this exact situation. Not because he still loved her. Those feelings had died the day she humiliated his mother. No, what frightened him was something else. Vanessa knew the truth. Every secret, every lie, every detail he had hidden from Amara. And judging by the determined expression on her face, she hadn't come to the market to apologize. She had come to cause trouble. Beside him, Amara looked confused. "Do you know her?" Damien's stomach tightened. Before he could answer, Vanessa spotted him. Her eyes widened. Then a cold smile appeared on her face. "Well, well, well." The sound of her voice sent a chill through Damien. Several traders turned to watch. People were already curious. A wealthy-looking woman dressed in expensive designer clothes stood out dramatically in the crowded marketplace. Vanessa slowly approached. Her high heels clicked against the pavement. Every step felt deliberate, calculated, dangerous. She stopped directly in front of Damien. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Vanessa laughed. "I've been looking everywhere for you." Damien's face hardened. "What are you doing here?" Her smile widened. "I came to see my fiancé." Amara blinked. "What?" Vanessa turned toward her. "Oh." Her eyes traveled up and down Amara's worn clothing. "So you're the girl." The way she said it instantly made Damien angry. "Vanessa." "What?" "Leave." She ignored him completely. Instead, she focused her attention on Amara. The younger woman suddenly felt uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. Vanessa crossed her arms. "You really don't know, do you?" Amara frowned. "Know what?" The smile on Vanessa's face became cruel. Damien immediately stepped forward. "Don't." Vanessa laughed. "Why?" "Leave her alone." "Or what?" People were gathering around now. Whispers spread through the market. Everyone sensed drama, and nobody wanted to miss it. Amara looked from one person to the other. Confusion filled her face. "What is going on?" Vanessa looked delighted. Apparently she had been waiting for this moment. "You should tell her." Damien clenched his fists. "Stop. Tell her who you are." His silence answered the question. Amara felt unease rising inside her. "Damien?" The billionaire closed his eyes briefly. Everything was falling apart, exactly as he had feared. Vanessa took a step closer to Amara. "Did he tell you he's poor?" Amara nodded slowly. Vanessa burst out laughing. The sound echoed across the market. Several people turned their heads. "What is so funny?" Amara asked. Vanessa wiped tears from her eyes. "Oh, this is priceless." "Vanessa." But she refused to stop. "You actually believed that?" Amara's confusion deepened. "Believed what?" Vanessa smiled. "The lie." The word hit like a hammer. "Lie." Amara turned toward Damien. "What lie?" He couldn't answer. His silence terrified her. Vanessa saw it, and took full advantage. "The man standing beside you isn't poor." Amara stared. "What?" "He owns companies." Her voice grew louder. "He owns hotels." The crowd began murmuring. Amara's heart started racing. "No." Vanessa nodded. "Oh yes." She pointed directly at Damien. "That's Damien Okafor." The world seemed to stop. For several seconds, Amara simply stared. The name sounded familiar, very familiar. Then realization hit. She had seen it in newspapers, on billboards, in advertisements. One of the richest men in the country. No. Her voice barely emerged. Vanessa smiled triumphantly. Yes. Amara slowly turned toward Damien. Her eyes searched his face, looking for denial, looking for reassurance, looking for anything. Instead she found guilt. And that was enough. The truth crashed into her all at once. The expensive watch he occasionally forgot to hide. The businessman who nearly recognized him. The nervous behavior. The secrets. The half-finished confessions. Everything suddenly made sense. Her heart broke. Tell me she's lying. Damien opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Tell me. Pain filled his eyes. I wanted to tell you. Amara took a step backward. The answer was enough. The truth was real. Every word. Every terrible word. Tears immediately filled her eyes. You lied to me. Damien moved toward her. Amara. No. She stepped back again. You lied. His heart shattered. I was going to explain. When? Her voice cracked. Tomorrow. Next month. Next year. Damien couldn't answer, because he didn't know. Vanessa folded her arms, clearly enjoying every second. That's not all. Damien turned toward her furiously. Enough. But Vanessa wasn't finished. Far from it. She wanted to destroy everything. You know his mother? Amara nodded numbly. Grace. Vanessa laughed. Market woman Grace? The younger woman's stomach dropped. What? She's rich too. Amara froze. No. Oh yes. Vanessa smiled cruelly. The stall. The clothes. The whole thing. All fake. Each word felt like a knife. The world spun around Amara. Even Grace had lied. The woman she trusted. The woman she loved like family. The woman who had shown her kindness. It had all been deception. Or so it seemed. Tears rolled down her cheeks. The crowd had fallen completely silent. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Everyone simply watched. Damien's heart ached. This was worse than anything he had imagined. Much worse. Because the hurt in Amara's eyes wasn't anger. It was betrayal. Deep betrayal. The kind that destroys trust. Amara, please listen. She looked at him. For the first time since meeting him, there was distance in her eyes. Pain. Disappointment. Heartbreak. Was any of it real? The question struck him harder than anything else. What? Our friendship. Her voice trembled. Our conversations. Our relationship. Tears streamed down her face. Was any of it real? Damien answered immediately. Every second. Amara shook her head. How can I believe that? The question left him speechless. Because she was right. Trust had been damaged. Perhaps severely damaged. Vanessa smiled. Satisfied. This was exactly what she wanted. To see Damien suffer. To see him lose someone he loved. The same way she had lost him. But unlike before, Damien wasn't focused on Vanessa. His attention remained entirely on Amara. Because she was crying. And he knew he had caused it. Not Vanessa. Him. His lies. His fear. His cowardice. The truth he should have revealed months ago. I never meant to hurt you. Amara laughed bitterly. Then why lie? Damien's voice broke. Because I was scared. Scared of what? Of losing you. The answer was honest. Completely honest. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough. Amara wiped her tears. That doesn't make it better. I know. You didn't trust me. The accusation hurt because it was true. You decided for me. She shook her head. You looked at me and assumed I'd only care about your money. No. Then why hide it? Damien struggled for words. How could he explain years of disappointment? Years of people using him? Years of doubting everyone's motives? How could he explain the fear that had consumed him after Vanessa? The answer was complicated. But Amara's pain was simple. The people she trusted had lied. And that hurt. A lot. Finally, she spoke again. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I thought I knew you. Damien felt tears threatening to form. You do. No. She shook her head. I don't. The words crushed him. For months, Amara had become the center of his world. And now she looked at him like a stranger. Vanessa smiled triumphantly. Mission accomplished. But before she could say another word, someone stepped forward. Grace. The older woman had arrived during the confrontation. And judging by the look on her face, she had heard enough. That's enough, Vanessa. The younger woman rolled her eyes. Oh look, the actress arrives. Grace ignored the insult. Her attention remained on Amara. The young woman looked devastated, broken, confused, and Grace's heart shattered, because she genuinely loved her, like a daughter. Amara. The younger woman stepped back. Even from her, the reaction hurt more than Grace expected. Please. Tears filled the older woman's eyes. Let me explain. But Amara couldn't listen. Not now. The pain was too fresh, too overwhelming, too raw. Without another word, she turned and ran. Amara! Damien called after her. She didn't stop, didn't turn around, didn't look back. She simply ran. Through the market, past the traders, past the crowds, past everyone, until she disappeared completely. Silence followed. Painful silence. Damien stood frozen, watching the direction she had gone, feeling as though his entire world had just collapsed. Vanessa's smile slowly faded. For the first time, she realized what she had actually done. This wasn't victory. It wasn't satisfaction. It was destruction. And somehow, watching Damien's heartbreak made her feel emptier than ever. Meanwhile, somewhere beyond the market, Amara ran until her legs could carry her no farther. Finally, she collapsed beneath a tree. Tears poured endlessly down her face. The man she loved was a billionaire. The woman she trusted had lied. Everything she believed was suddenly uncertain. Yet despite the pain, one thought hurt more than all the others. Because even after learning the truth, even after discovering the deception, even after feeling betrayed, a part of her still loved him. And that realization broke her heart more than anything else. For 3 days, Amara disappeared. She didn't return to the market. She didn't visit the stall. She didn't answer the few messages Damien managed to send through people who knew her. It was as though she had vanished. And with each passing day, Damien's anxiety grew worse. The market no longer felt alive. The laughter was gone. The warmth was gone. Everything reminded him of her. The chair where she usually sat. The corner where they shared meals. The path they walked together every evening. Every memory felt like a knife twisting deeper into his heart. One morning, Grace found her son staring blankly at the stall. Customers were coming and going, yet he barely noticed. The older woman sighed. You need to eat. I'm not hungry. You said that yesterday. Damien remained silent. Grace sat beside him. For several moments, neither spoke. Finally, she placed a hand on his shoulder. She'll come back. What if she doesn't? The question was quiet, painful, real. Grace looked at her son carefully. For the first time since Vanessa, she saw genuine fear in his eyes. Not fear of losing money, not fear of failure, fear of losing someone he loved. You have to give her time. Damien nodded, but patience felt impossible, especially when every hour without Amara felt unbearable. Meanwhile, across the city, Amara sat alone beneath an abandoned warehouse. The past 3 days had been miserable. She barely slept, barely ate, barely spoke. Her emotions felt tangled together. Anger, sadness, confusion, heartbreak. Every time she thought about Damien, 2 completely different memories appeared. One memory showed the man she had fallen in love with. The kind man who shared food with her. The man who listened to her stories. The man who made her laugh. The man who held her hand beneath the sunset. The other memory showed a stranger, a billionaire, a man living a life she knew nothing about, a man who had hidden the truth for months, a man who had lied. Neither image matched the other, and she didn't know which one was real. Perhaps both were. That possibility hurt most of all. One afternoon, she sat quietly near the river where she often went to think. The water moved peacefully. Birds flew overhead. Children played nearby. Life continued normally. Yet her heart felt anything but normal. She remembered something Damien had once said. "I think meeting you changed my life." At the time, the words had filled her with happiness. Now they brought tears, because she had believed him completely. A voice interrupted her thoughts. "You're hiding." Amara looked up. Her friend Ngozi stood nearby. The older woman sold vegetables in the market. She had known Amara for years. "I'm not hiding." Ngozi raised an eyebrow. "Really?" Amara sighed. "Maybe a little." The woman sat beside her, then waited patiently. Eventually Amara told her everything. The lies, the billionaire secret, the fake identities, the confrontation, the heartbreak. By the time she finished, Ngozi remained silent for a long moment. Then she asked a simple question. "Do you still love him?" Amara immediately looked away. Unfortunately, that was answer enough. Ngozi smiled gently. "I thought so." Amara wiped her eyes. "That doesn't matter." "It matters." "He lied." "Yes." The older woman nodded. "He did." Finally, someone understood. Someone wasn't making excuses. Someone wasn't defending him. Amara felt relieved. Then Ngozi added, "But people sometimes do foolish things when they're afraid." Amara frowned. "What does that mean?" The older woman sighed. "It means hurt people make mistakes." The words lingered in Amara's mind long after the conversation ended. That same evening, Damien made a decision. He couldn't wait anymore. He needed to find her. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Now. After asking around the market, he finally discovered where she often spent her evenings. As the sun began setting, he drove toward the river. His heart pounded the entire way. What if she refused to see him? What if she hated him? What if this was the end? The possibility terrified him. When he finally arrived, he immediately spotted her. She sat alone beneath a large tree, watching the water, looking smaller than he remembered, more fragile, more distant. For a moment he simply stood there, gathering courage. Then he slowly approached. Amara sensed someone nearby. When she turned and saw him, her entire body stiffened. Neither spoke. The silence stretched endlessly. Finally Damien broke it. "Hello." The simplicity of the greeting almost made her laugh. Almost. "What are you doing here?" His voice was soft. "I came to see you." Amara looked away. "You shouldn't have." The words hurt, but Damien remained where he was. "I needed to talk to you." "I don't." The answer was immediate, sharp, defensive, understandable. Damien nodded slowly. "You have every right to be angry." Amara laughed bitterly. "You think I'm angry?" The pain in her voice shocked him, because suddenly he realized something. Anger wasn't the problem. Hurt was, and hurt often cut deeper. "You lied to me." Damien lowered his head. "I know. For months. I know. Every single day." His chest tightened. "I know." The repeated answers frustrated her. Then why? Finally, the question he had been dreading. Why? For months he had asked himself the same thing. And now he had to answer honestly. "I was afraid." Amara shook her head. "No." "Yes." "No." Tears appeared in her eyes again. "Stop saying that." Damien looked confused. "What?" "You keep saying you were afraid." She stood up. Emotion poured from every word. "You had money. You had power. You had everything." Her voice broke. "What exactly were you afraid of?" The question pierced him, because on the surface it sounded ridiculous. What could a billionaire possibly fear? Yet Damien knew the answer. Loneliness, rejection, being used, being loved for the wrong reasons. "I was afraid you'd leave." Amara froze. For several seconds she simply stared at him. Then she laughed sadly. "You never gave me the chance to choose." The words struck like a hammer, because they were true, painfully true. Damien sat down on a nearby rock. For the first time he stopped defending himself, stopped making excuses, stopped trying to justify his actions. Instead, he simply spoke honestly. After Vanessa, everything changed. Amara listened despite herself. "I trusted her." His voice became quieter. I was going to marry her. He stared at the river. Then she humiliated my mother. The pain remained visible. Even now, months later, I felt stupid. He laughed bitterly. I thought I knew her. Amara remained silent. I started questioning everyone. Damien shook his head. Every woman I met. Every conversation. Every compliment. He looked at her. I didn't know who was genuine anymore. For the first time, Amara began seeing beyond her own pain. Not because it excused what he had done, but because it explained it. There was a difference. A big difference. Still, the hurt remained. You should have trusted me. The words emerged softly, almost like a plea. Damien nodded immediately. You're right. No argument. No defense. No excuses. Just acceptance. That surprised her. Most people spent their lives avoiding responsibility. Damien wasn't. I should have trusted you. His voice cracked slightly. And I'm sorry. The sincerity was impossible to miss. Amara looked away quickly, because part of her wanted to forgive him, and that frightened her. Very much. I don't know if I can do this. The confession hurt both of them. Damien closed his eyes briefly. Do what? Trust you again. Those words nearly shattered him, because trust was the one thing he had hoped to protect. And in trying to protect it, he had destroyed it. The irony wasn't lost on him. For several minutes neither spoke. The evening air felt cool. The river flowed peacefully. The world seemed strangely calm despite the storm inside their hearts. Finally Damien stood. I don't expect forgiveness today. Amara looked up. He smiled sadly. Or tomorrow. His eyes filled with emotion. But I need you to know something. What? Everything else was real. She stared at him. Our conversations. Our friendship. The way I feel about you. His voice trembled. All of it. Tears filled Amara's eyes again. Because deep down she believed him. That was the problem. Despite everything, she believed him. And that made moving on almost impossible. Damien took one final step backward. I'll give you space. He forced a smile. But I won't stop loving you. The words lingered in the air long after he spoke them. Then he turned around and slowly walked away. Amara watched him disappear into the distance. Her heart felt torn in two. Part of her wanted to run after him. Part of her wanted to stay angry. Part of her wanted to forget everything. The problem was that love complicated everything. Nothing was simple anymore. As darkness settled over the river, tears rolled silently down her cheeks. Because for the first time she realized the truth. The issue wasn't whether Damien loved her. She knew he did. The issue wasn't whether she loved him. She knew she did. The real question was whether love could survive broken trust. And at that moment, she honestly didn't know the answer. A week passed after Damien's visit to the river. 7 long days. 7 painful days. 7 days filled with silence. Although Amara had returned to doing small jobs around the market, she still avoided Damien. Whenever she saw him from a distance, she quietly walked away. Whenever she heard his voice, her heart immediately began racing. And every night, she found herself thinking about him. The memories refused to leave. His laughter, his kindness, the way he listened whenever she spoke, the way he shared food with her, the way he made her feel valued. No matter how hard she tried to focus on the lies, her mind kept returning to the man she had fallen in love with. That only made everything more difficult. Because if she hated him, moving on would be easy. But she didn't hate him. Not even close. And that was the problem. One afternoon, Amara sat beneath a tree near the edge of the market. The day was unusually quiet. Most traders were busy with customers. A gentle breeze moved through the area. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to simply sit and think. Unfortunately, her thoughts immediately drifted toward Damien. Again, she sighed heavily. You really are impossible. A familiar voice interrupted her thoughts. Amara looked up. Her eyes widened. Grace stood nearby. The older woman looked nervous. Something Amara had never seen before. For a moment neither spoke. The tension between them felt uncomfortable, painful, because the betrayal involving Grace hurt almost as much as the one involving Damien. Perhaps more. Grace had become like family, the mother she thought she had lost forever. And suddenly, everything she believed about her had been questioned. "Hello, Amara." The younger woman lowered her eyes. "Hello." Grace slowly approached. "May I sit down?" Amara hesitated, then nodded. The older woman sat beside her. For several moments neither spoke. Finally Grace broke the silence. "I owe you an apology." Amara looked surprised. The words sounded sincere, very sincere. "I should have told you the truth." Grace's voice trembled slightly. "And I'm sorry." The younger woman stared at the ground. Part of her wanted to remain angry. Another part wanted to listen. The second part won. Why? The question was simple. Yet Grace understood what it truly meant. Why lie? Why pretend? Why deceive someone who trusted you? The older woman took a deep breath. Then she began. "Do you remember the day I met you?" Amara nodded. "The market." "Yes." Grace smiled softly. "You helped a stranger carry heavy bags." The memory returned immediately. "I remember. You didn't know who I was." "No. You didn't know I had money." Amara remained silent. Grace continued. "You helped me because you wanted to help." The older woman's eyes became emotional. "That meant more than you realize." Tears threatened to form. "After that day, I couldn't stop thinking about you." Amara looked surprised. "What?" Grace nodded. "You reminded me of something." "What?" "The kind of person I hoped my son would find." The younger woman's heart skipped a beat. Grace looked away briefly, then continued. "Before meeting you, Damien had changed." Her expression grew sad. "Vanessa broke something inside him." Amara listened carefully. This part of the story she didn't know. "Not completely." Grace sighed. "He stopped trusting people. He stopped believing in love. He started questioning everyone's motives." The pain in her voice was obvious. As a mother, watching her son suffer had been difficult. Very difficult. "You know what Vanessa did?" Amara nodded slowly. The memory still shocked her. Grace shook her head. "But what happened afterward was even worse." The younger woman frowned. "What do you mean?" "Damien became lonely." The older woman smiled sadly. "He had money. He had success. He had everything people dream about." Her voice became softer. "Except happiness." Amara looked down. For the first time, she began seeing a side of Damien she had never fully understood. Grace continued. "Every woman he met wanted something." The older woman laughed bitterly. "Some wanted fame. Some wanted money. Some wanted status." She shook her head. After a while, he stopped knowing who was genuine. The words lingered in the air. Amara suddenly remembered many conversations she and Damien had shared. His hesitation, his caution, the sadness he sometimes carried. Perhaps there had always been clues. Perhaps she simply hadn't understood them. "I never intended to deceive you." Grace's voice interrupted her thoughts. The older woman looked genuinely heartbroken. "I rented that stall because I wanted to know you better." Amara blinked. "What?" Grace nodded. "I liked you immediately." A small smile appeared on her face. "You were kind, honest, hard-working." The older woman laughed softly. "And stubborn." Despite herself, Amara smiled. The first genuine smile she had given Grace in days. Seeing it made Grace emotional. "Do you know what impressed me most?" Amara shook her head. "You kept helping me." Grace pointed toward the market. "You worked at that stall every day. You refused money. You shared food. You returned lost wallets." The older woman's eyes glistened. "Nobody told you to do those things. You simply did them." Silence settled between them. Then Grace asked a question. "Do you think I would have loved you this much if you weren't genuine?" The question caught Amara off guard. Because the answer was obvious. No. Grace wasn't pretending. Not then. Not now. The affection had always been real. Tears filled Amara's eyes. Then why didn't you tell me? The older woman sighed. Because I made the same mistake Damien made. What mistake? Grace smiled sadly. Fear. The answer surprised her. Fear. Yes. The older woman nodded. I was afraid too. Afraid of what? That you would disappear. The confession stunned Amara. Grace laughed softly. It sounds silly. No, it doesn't. The younger woman understood fear, perhaps better than most people. For several moments both women sat quietly. Then Grace reached into her handbag. She removed a small photograph. Look. Amara accepted it. The image showed a much younger Damien standing beside his mother. They looked poor, very poor. Their clothes were worn. Their smiles were tired. Yet they looked happy. He wasn't born rich. Grace's voice softened. We struggled for years. Amara studied the photograph carefully. He told me some of that. Grace nodded. I worked multiple jobs. The older woman pointed at the picture. There were days we had almost nothing. Tears filled her eyes. But we survived. The younger woman stared at the image. For the first time, Damien's wealth seemed less important, because she could suddenly see the person beneath it. The boy who had once struggled. The boy who loved his mother. The boy who grew into the man she knew. Grace gently took the photograph back. Then she looked directly into Amara's eyes. Did Damien lie? The question surprised her. Yes. The older woman nodded. He did. There was no excuse, no denial, no attempt to avoid responsibility. Just honesty. He was wrong. Amara blinked. The answer wasn't what she expected. Grace continued. He should have trusted you. Yes. He should have told you the truth. Yes. The older woman smiled sadly. But can I ask you something? Amara nodded. When you think about him, Grace's voice softened. What kind of man do you see? The younger woman immediately opened her mouth, then stopped, because suddenly memories flooded her mind. Damien carrying boxes for elderly traders. Damien sharing his lunch. Damien listening to her stories. Damien helping children. Damien comforting her when she cried. Damien laughing with her. Damien holding her hand beneath the sunset. The memories arrived one after another, and every single one felt real, not fake, real. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Grace saw them, and understood. You don't see a billionaire. Amara slowly shook her head. No. The older woman smiled. You see Damien. The younger woman began crying. Because it was true. Very true. Grace gently held her hand. Money doesn't change who he is. Her voice became firm. The man you fell in love with wasn't an act. The words struck deeply, perhaps deeper than anything else, because that had been her greatest fear, that the entire relationship had been fake, that none of it had been real. Yet now she realized something important. The wealth had been hidden. The feelings had not. The lies had been real. But so had the love. So what do I do? Amara whispered. Grace smiled through her own tears. That's up to you. The older woman stood, then paused. One final thought remained. He loves you. Amara looked up. Grace's expression was completely sincere. More than you realize. The older woman laughed softly. In fact, he's been miserable. Despite everything, Amara laughed. A small laugh, but a genuine one. Grace grinned. That's better. Then she began walking away. After several steps, she stopped. Without turning around, she spoke one final sentence. My son is an idiot. Amara burst out laughing. The unexpected comment caught her completely off guard. Grace laughed too. Trust me. The older woman shook her head. I've known him for 30 years. The two women shared a smile. A real smile. The kind they hadn't shared since the truth was revealed. As Grace disappeared into the crowd, Amara remained beneath the tree, alone once again. But something had changed. The anger felt lighter. The confusion felt clearer. The pain remained. Yet now it existed beside understanding. And as she stared toward the distant horizon, she finally admitted something she had been fighting for days. She still loved him. She still loved Damien. Not because he was rich, not because he was successful, but because beneath all the mistakes, beneath all the secrets, beneath all the fear, he was still the same man who had captured her heart. And for the first time since learning the truth, the possibility of forgiveness no longer seemed impossible. It seemed possible, perhaps even inevitable, because love, when it is real, has a remarkable way of surviving even the most painful storms. For several days after her conversation with Grace, Amara found herself thinking constantly, not about the lies, not about the deception, not even about Damien's wealth. Instead, she thought about the man behind it all, the man she had come to know, the man who had made her laugh when life felt unbearable, the man who had treated her with kindness when nobody else seemed to notice her existence, the man who had loved her long before she knew he was rich. The more she reflected, the clearer everything became. Damien had made mistakes, big mistakes, but his love had never been one of them. And deep down, she knew something else. She had made a mistake too, not by trusting him, but by allowing his secret to make her forget everything else. The truth was simple. The billionaire and the poor man were the same person. Both were Damien, and she loved him. One evening, as the sun began setting over the city, Amara made a decision. She could remain angry forever, or she could follow her heart. The choice suddenly seemed obvious. The next morning, she returned to the market. For the first time in weeks, the moment traders saw her, smiles spread across their faces. "Amara, you're back. We missed you." The young woman smiled warmly. "It feels good to be back." Yet she wasn't there for the market. She wasn't there for work. She was there for one person. Her eyes searched the familiar paths, the stalls, the crowds, the walkways, but Damien wasn't there. A strange feeling of disappointment settled inside her. Had he stopped coming? Had he given up? Before she could think further, Grace appeared. The older woman froze when she saw her. Then her face lit up. "Amara!" A second later, Grace wrapped her in a tight hug. The younger woman laughed. "I missed you too." The older woman pulled back. Tears immediately filled her eyes. "You came back." Amara smiled softly. "I did." Grace studied her face carefully. Then she noticed something important. The anger was gone. The bitterness was gone. Hope had returned. The older woman nearly cried from happiness. "Wait here." Then she rushed away. Amara blinked. "Wait where?" But Grace had already disappeared. Across town, Damien sat inside his office staring blankly at his computer screen. Work had become impossible. For weeks he had gone through the motions without truly focusing. His assistant entered carrying documents. "Sir." No response. "Sir." Damien blinked. "What?" The assistant sighed. "You signed this upside down." Damien looked down. Sure enough, he had. The assistant looked concerned. "You need a vacation." Damien laughed weakly. "Maybe." Before the conversation could continue, his phone suddenly rang. The screen displayed one name, Mom. Immediately he answered. "Hello. Get here now." Damien nearly dropped the phone. "What? Now?" His mother's excitement confused him. "Mom, what's wrong?" "Nothing is wrong." "Then why are you shouting?" "Just come." The line disconnected. Damien stared at the phone, then immediately stood up. Only one thing could make his mother behave like that. Hope exploded inside his chest. Could it be? No. Maybe. His heart began racing. Within minutes, he was speeding toward the market. Meanwhile, Amara sat nervously beside the stall. Suddenly she wondered if returning had been a mistake. What if Damien didn't want to see her anymore? What if too much damage had been done? What if... The sound of a vehicle interrupted her thoughts. She turned. A familiar figure stepped out. For a moment, everything else disappeared. The market, the people, the noise, the world. Only Damien remained. He froze the moment he saw her. Neither moved, neither spoke. Several seconds passed. Then Damien slowly walked forward. Amara stood. Her heart pounded violently. When he finally stopped in front of her, Neither knew what to say. After everything that had happened, words suddenly felt inadequate. Finally, Damien broke the silence. "Hi!" Amara laughed softly. The simple greeting felt strangely perfect. "Hi!" For several moments, neither spoke. Then Damien asked the question that had haunted him for weeks. "Why are you here?" Amara smiled. "Because I missed you." The words hit him like lightning. His eyes widened. "What?" Tears filled her eyes. "I tried being angry." A small laugh escaped her. "I'm apparently terrible at it." Damien couldn't believe what he was hearing. Amara stepped closer. "You hurt me." His face fell. "I know. You lied. I know. I was angry. I know." Then she smiled through her tears. "But I love you anyway." The world stopped. Everything stopped. For a second Damien wasn't sure he had heard correctly. "What?" Amara laughed. "You heard me." Emotion overwhelmed him. Weeks of pain, fear, regret, hope, everything crashed together. Without thinking, he pulled her into his arms. Amara hugged him tightly. Neither cared who was watching. Neither cared about the crowd gathering nearby. Nothing mattered except the fact that they were finally together again. The market erupted into applause. Traders cheered. Customers smiled. Even complete strangers celebrated. Grace stood nearby crying openly. She wasn't even trying to hide it. After a few minutes, Damien reluctantly pulled back. Then he looked directly into Amara's eyes. "I don't deserve you." She smiled. "Probably not." Both laughed. The familiar humor instantly returned. And somehow, everything felt right again. A month later, Damien invited Amara somewhere special. She expected a restaurant, or perhaps a park. Instead, he drove her to a beautiful hill overlooking the city, the same place where they had watched the sunset months earlier. The moment she recognized it, she smiled. "You remembered." "I remember everything." The sincerity in his voice made her blush. As they stood together watching the sunset, Damien became unusually nervous. Amara noticed immediately. "What's wrong?" He laughed. "Everything." The answer confused her. Then suddenly he stepped forward. His hands trembled slightly. His heart raced. For a billionaire who negotiated billion-dollar contracts without fear, this moment felt terrifying. Because this mattered more than any business deal ever could. Slowly, he dropped to one knee. Amara gasped. Tears immediately filled her eyes. "No way." Damien smiled. "Oh yes." He reached into his pocket, then removed a small velvet box. The same type of box that once symbolized heartbreak. Now it symbolized hope. When he opened it, a beautiful ring sparkled in the fading sunlight. "Amara." His voice shook with emotion. "You came into my life when I had stopped believing in love." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "You taught me to trust again." His own eyes became watery. "You taught me that kindness still exists." The young woman covered her mouth, trying unsuccessfully to stop crying. Damien smiled. "I may be a billionaire." His voice softened. "But without you, none of it means anything." By now, Amara was openly crying. "I love you." The words emerged with complete sincerity. "I love your heart. I love your strength. I love your kindness. I love you." Then came the question, the most important question of his life. "Will you marry me?" Amara laughed through her tears, then nodded repeatedly. "Yes." The answer came immediately. "Yes." Again. "Yes." Damien slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into his arms. As the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, they shared their first kiss as an engaged couple. 6 months later, the wedding finally arrived. Unlike Damien's previous canceled wedding, this ceremony felt completely different. There was no pretense, no arrogance, no selfishness, only love. The entire market attended. Traders who had known Amara for years cried during the ceremony. Children she had helped sat in the front rows. Friends filled every seat. And standing proudly beside the couple was Grace, the happiest person in the entire building. As Damien and Amara exchanged vows, tears streamed down her face. Her son had finally found happiness. Real happiness. the kind money couldn't buy. After the ceremony, Damien surprised everyone. He announced the creation of a foundation dedicated to helping homeless young people. The first project? A housing center named after Amara's parents. The young woman cried so hard she ruined her makeup, and Damien laughed the entire time. Years later, their love story became famous. People often spoke about the billionaire who fell in love with a homeless girl. But those who truly knew the story understood something deeper. Amara hadn't changed because Damien was rich, and Damien hadn't fallen in love because Amara was poor. They fell in love because they saw each other's hearts. One afternoon many years later, Damien sat beside his wife watching their children play in the garden. Grace sat nearby spoiling her grandchildren as usual. Life wasn't perfect. No life ever is. But it was beautiful. Damien smiled and squeezed Amara's hand. "You know something?" "What?" He laughed softly. "My mother found my wife at a market." Amara laughed. Grace rolled her eyes. "You say that every year, and I'll keep saying it." Everyone burst into laughter. As the sun slowly set behind their home, Damien looked around at the family he loved. Then he silently thanked God, because the greatest treasure he had ever found wasn't a company, or a fortune, or a business empire. It was a homeless girl with a kind heart who once stopped to help an old woman carry heavy bags. And from that simple act of kindness, a beautiful love story had been born.